Hey, it's Benji Cole, son of Al Cole from CBS Radio and host of People of Distinction, the talk that gives an in-depth view of some of the most dynamic, intelligent, and successful people on the planet. Run to our website, peopleofdistinction.org for more info, or you can always email me directly at benji@alcoleenterprises.com. And on the line with us today, we have Robert Epperly. We'll be discussing his fantastic book, How to Get Great Results, Using the Relational Leadership Model. Available for purchase through Amazon, Barnes & Noble, but if you guys want to get everything that Robert has to offer, do yourself a favor and go directly to his personal site, johncmaxwellgroup.com/Robert Epperly. There, not only will you find more information on Robert himself, you'll find more information on this book, How to Get Great Results, as well as find hyperlinks set up to take you to the purchasing page. So one more time, that's johncmaxwellgroup.com/Robert Epperly. Robert was brought to our network, People of Distinction, today by some of the best movers in the business, Book Launch International. So if you have a book that you'd like moved, do yourself a favor and contact Book Launch. And you can find out more information on them at booklaunchintl.com. So without further ado, Robert, first and foremost, welcome to People of Distinction, and thank you so much for being a guest. How are you?
I'm doing great, Benji. Thank you for having me.
Well, listen, we're very much looking forward to this and really looking forward to the education that we're going to be able to receive from you today. Now, Robert, I know we have so much information to cover, but let's hold off slightly before we jump into the book. Start off by articulating to our listening audience a little bit more about yourself, please.
So I'm from Manford, Oklahoma. You would have to Google that to try and find it. It's just west of Tulsa, about 30 miles. And I grew up, went to high school there, graduated in 1988, went to a junior college for electrical engineering, technology, and then a little thing in the Middle East starts up in August of 1990 called Desert Shield. So I enlisted in the Army. Most of my family throughout the years, both grandfathers served in World War II, stepfather did. So I enlisted in the Army. Long story short, was a Patriot missile operator and system mechanic. Went overseas for 2 tours of duty and met my wife while I was deployed, who was also from Oklahoma. We get married and have one daughter when we're in the service. And we decide to, at the end of our contract, to not renew because our unit's continuing going back over to the Middle East. So we moved back home to Oklahoma and raise our daughter. And I start working at a local company where I've now been for 25 years called the Webco Industries. And we got a great life. It's just her and I now. Our daughter's gone to college and graduated and moved out. But it's great. I love reading books. People that know me know I do. I read about 50 books a year. But about 2014, we had some medical issues with my wife going on. And the outlet for me kind of processing 4 years of her medical issues of dealing with cancer and all the 12 surgeries that she had was really to dive into some kind of outlet, and that outlet was writing this book.
Robert, so much to unpack there. First and foremost, thank you you and your wife, thank you very much for your service and what you've been able to provide here for our country. And listen, the gratitude is never enough, but let me start by saying thank you first and foremost. Secondly, how interesting. It's such a small world that you guys are both from Oklahoma, but you had to go overseas to cross paths. And that sounds like a beautiful relationship that has started and a wonderful family that you've constructed. So congratulations on that. Robert, without further ado, How to Get Great Results. Tell us a little bit more about your book, please.
Yeah, so, kind of growing up and looking at the military leadership at the time, some was good, some I would have chosen to be better. I've only worked for a handful of companies in my career, but each of those I've seen examples of good leadership and not so good leadership. And reading books and studying, I'm a student of John Maxwell, so following his mentorship and leadership throughout the years and looking at it, I found what I found to be the best method at getting great results, and that really is using participation, inclusion, but learning to lead people the way they want to be led, not just the way I want to do it. And if you could boil it down as concisely as you can possibly get, that's really kind of the thing, is that leaders that perform to higher levels do so because they figure out how someone needs to be led.
Absolutely. Robert, right there in the subtitle, you're hinting towards the specific model that you represent in the book, the relational leadership model. First and foremost, what is that model and why is it so successful?
Okay. Yeah. So people are motivated by different things. They manage their time and their attention by using different tactics. I've learned over the years the way I'm successful is using a calendar. I also occasionally use to-do list and write list, and when I go shopping and stuff to make sure I focus when I need to get in and get out and do those things. But it's really what you need for you to be successful, so that whatever assignments, requirements, tasks, teams that you're leading, that you give attention to all of those, but you have to be organized in such a way that you don't drop any of those balls. And so for me, I use Microsoft Outlook. It's synced up with my iPhone. I can see anytime. And I tell people regularly, if you don't put it on my calendar, there's probably a pretty good chance it is not going to happen.
I'm the same way. Organization is so key, and my calendar is constantly my first go-to. The moment I wake up in the morning, it's the first thing I'm looking at. Right before I go to bed at night, it's the last thing I'm seeing. This way I have a very good idea of the structure that I have ahead of me. Now, Robert, let's talk about inspiration. At the very beginning of the interview, you hinted towards, of course, the health complications with your wife and the situation that you were both going through. And this book was almost an outlet for you to really just escape and create this narrative. Now, of course, that very easily could have just remained a hobby for you and something that you did to kind of help occupy your mind, given this situation you were dealing with. But it didn't end there. How was this book created, and what was the inspiration for putting it out?
Good. Yep. So I'm going to rewind just a little bit. In 2008 and 9, I was in a Master's of Business Administration degree plan here in Oklahoma for the Southern Nazarene University. And part of that school requirement was reading. And that's kind of where I got reinvigorated to reading again. And so I came across this book by Jack Welch called Straight from the Gut. He ended up becoming the CEO of General Electric. And in that book, he talked about if they were going to be highly successful as an organization, there were things they needed to do. They needed to teach their employees who they were, their culture, how to run equipment and do things like that. I took that idea from what he did at GE and applied it to where I was working at Webco. At the end of that MBA program, after I graduated, I put the idea for this. I now lead Webco University for the company I'm at. This idea, I put it out here to my boss and said, "Hey, we need to try this." And it went all the way through from the vice president all the way up to our CEO. It was cool. Everything was going good, but we needed something to kind of hang our organization on, right? What was going to be that thing to really develop and help leaders move through the organization from an entry level all the way up to however far they wanted to go. Mm-hmm. Well, in 2014 rolls around, my wife has surgery number 1 on Halloween of that year. It was a benign tumor that they removed. She healed up from that, and they did all kinds of tests. In December of 2014, they declared her cancer-free. Fast forward to February of 2015, she's got cancer. And at that time, honestly, I was mad because she had been through so much. They told us we celebrated our anniversary in the 1st of December of 2014, and then to find out 45 days later she had cancer. And I was just mad, and I needed an outlet. I was mad at a lot of things, including God. And I'm like, why? And she's like, "What are you going to do?" And I'm like, I don't know what else to do. I've just got to get this out of my brain, because I've got to be there for her every step of the way and not put this burden of how I felt on her, because she was going through enough as it was. I think it was her that's like, "Well, just put it on paper or something, whatever." Oh, okay. And so I just, honestly, as these things were going on, it took me about 30 days to get draft one written, and about 90 days to get it out, let people read it, and have them give me feedback and stuff. And so, really, in about 90 days between 24, when I worked on it, 2014 to 2015, the thing was written. But it
Wow.
took several no's from publishers, like no thanks, no thanks. Fast forward to December 2019, I see a commercial on TV from Covenant Books, and they're advertising about authors sending manuscripts in. And I'm like, it's been like 6 or 7 years. Why not? And I'll try it one more time. I put it out there. 3 days later, they call me and they're like, "Hey, we want to publish your book." And I'm like, "Do what? For real?" So that's kind of how it happened.
That's incredible. Robert, what a great story of perseverance. Great words of wisdom there. And I know that wasn't, of course, the intent, but that is a fantastic message that I'm sure my listening audience will be able to take and run with. Once again, here on the line with Robert Epperly, we're discussing his fantastic book, How to Get Great Results, available for purchase through Amazon, BarnesandNoble.com, or directly through his site, johncmaxwellgroup.com/Robert Epperly. Robert, for any business owner or even someone that just wants to improve their leadership skills, what are some tips or words of wisdom that you can offer them that they can implement today to really help their business in the future?
Yeah. Yep. Great. Thank you. Great question again. I say first thing is people can be managed, but they would much rather be led, and it just is what it is. People will always perform at a higher level when they are led, and that begins with developing a relationship with people. And does it take time? Are people messy? Yes, and yes. People need time and attention, right? And so this is not a one and done activity.
Mm-hmm.
The things we teach where I work, every month you have a monthly one-on-one, just time with you and the employee, what's going on, talking about what's going on with them individually, their family, if they have children, what's going on with them, and then yes, what's going on with their job so they understand. And then every week I make rounds and stop and talk to everybody. I spend about 5 to 10 minutes 2 to 3 times per week just asking the questions. What are you working on now? What can I help you with? And just kind of remove roadblocks from them. But when people see you care more about them than you do your position or your title or whatever it is you've got, they will perform at a higher level. They will give you discretionary effort, but it takes time. And it takes a different time with every person because you may have things in common with a certain person. You may like me, I love college football. I may have that in common, or movies or music or what have you. And I can quickly get through some of those things because of the things we have in common. Things I don't with people, it takes me a little longer.
Mm-hmm.
But again, people will perform at a higher level when you lead them and they know you care about them. They know they can trust you and things like that.
Absolutely. As we start to tie up, Robert, I'm curious. So the description for your book talks about your main protagonist, the character by the name of Taylar. Now, we follow this individual as she goes through and she is trying to connect, lead, and inspire people that she's working with. Now, I'm curious, the way your book is laid out, is it a fictional narrative that we can see all of these tools being implemented, or is it a guide taken from Taylar, who is actually a person, and how she was able to implement this style?
That's an even better question. So, fun fact for everybody, Taylar is actually my daughter. And so she is the
Oh,
key protagonist of the book. Okay, so I needed a lead character, and she was it. She's a good girl, so she needed a little publicity there. But the things that Taylar encounters in this book are things that I've encountered in my life, and so these are things that I've dealt with and had to work through and do things. And so there's been the characters that are in their book are named after people I know. They're not. Most of them are my relatives or people I work with. They're not those people. But there's a character in that book. I won't name it. I want you to read the book and find out. But there's one person in that book that is really, really tough for Taylar to connect with and lead and do things. And that was my experience within person that I worked with. And it was, in fact, it was probably even tougher than I tried that I could form, on the pages of the book. But it's tough. But yeah, these are real experiences that happened to me. And another little fun fact so people know, my name before I was born was going to be Thomas Eric Miller. This character shows up in this book as Thomas Eric, and it didn't happen at the last minute. My dad's like, hey, you need to tell my mom he needs to be named after me, so I became Robert James Epperly Jr. because of that. So, but no, these are real things. This is not fictional stuff.
Fantastic. Guys, listen, so much more can be discussed. That's what I love about this is we've barely scratched the surface. I mean, listen, we got to the final question, and the final question was going really a little bit more in depth with the narrative itself. So, we're still on the surface level. Now, we got the essence of the book, but everything else, all the intricacies to it, the onus is on you. Okay, you know where you got to go. You got to pick up the book now. This is something that maybe was specifically geared and developed for business owners, for managers, right? For people leading other employees. But what I love is everything that we've discussed so far. Guys, these are things that you can use regardless of age, regardless of career. We're talking about relationship building, taking the time, the opportunity, and putting forth the effort to understand the people you're working with. Because when you understand them, and you formulate and you're building those bridges, people will follow your lead. And that is such a great piece of advice that regardless of age, regardless of background, you can take pieces of this and implement it. And you can build yourself into a better leader before even being put into that leadership position. One more time, here on the line with Robert Epperly. We just finished discussing his fantastic book, How to Get Great Results, using the Relational Leadership Model. Available for purchase through Amazon, BarnesandNoble.com, or JohnCMaxwellGroup.com/Robert Epperly. You surely will not be disappointed. Let's grow, let's develop, let's educate ourselves. And it starts with this fantastic book. Robert, thank you once again for being a guest with us today. This has absolutely been a pleasure, man. Appreciate it.
Fantastic host, and I appreciate it. You do a great job.